Welcome to Harvest to Pour, the business of beverages, with your host, Matthew Shipp. This is the podcast for all of those who are involved in the agriculture all the way to the distribution of beverages. And now your host, Matthew Shipp.
Hello and welcome to Harvest to Pour. I'm your host, Matthew Shipp, and today I am here with Brian Gumm, the founder of Ross Street Roasting, a coffee roasting business based in Iowa. Ross Street Roasting started as a small local business but expanded nationally through its website and e-commerce presence. So how are you doing this morning, Brian?
I'm doing all right, Matthew. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being on. I'm excited to have you here. So let us know a little bit about yourself and how Ross Street kind of roasting came to be and what inspired you to start it.
Yeah. I like to think that Ross Street Roasting started as a quasi midlife crisis in my mid-30s. I had just recently gotten out of graduate school. So I spent my late 20s and early 30s in grad school. And it was there in kind of Shenandoah Valley of Virginia is where I went to school, small private liberal arts school. And I discovered a couple coffee roasters in the area, both a commercial coffee roaster and some home coffee roasters. So like hobbyists who were roasting in their home. I had already been a coffee drinker for about 15 years or so. So I thought that, hey, this is kind of cool. It was my first introduction to the roasting process, producing coffee. Found that interesting. And then after graduate school, we moved back to our home state of Iowa, and we moved to my wife's hometown in rural central Iowa in a small town of about 5,000 people. And having been recently spoiled with really good fresh roasted coffee, we moved to an area that had none of that. And since I had a little bit more time on my hands after graduating, I thought, well, this roasting thing sounded cool. So I reached out to one of the home roasters that I had become familiar with and said, hey, tell me everything I need to know about roasting. And he got me set up with some, like a pound or two of green unroasted coffee. I picked myself up a hot air popcorn popper from the local department store in our small town. And that was my first coffee roaster. And I fell down the rabbit hole immediately and fell in love with roasting, fell in love with learning more about where coffee came from, where it comes from, how it's produced, why things taste differently based on a range of factors. And so it was just a really fun rabbit hole that I fell down and just kept pursuing. And it really didn't take me too long. It was only within the first 3 months, I was already thinking as a hobby roaster, I was thinking about maybe I could make something of this as a business. So that's kind of where the idea for the business came from. And in 2015, we incorporated as a formal business and we commercialized and launched the brand at that point. And 9 years later, I'm still at it.
Great. So you got hooked quick.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. So was this your first business?
It was. I had worked for small businesses in the past, both kind of like small town type small businesses. I worked for a couple of very small tech companies earlier in my career and even more recently. So I'd been exposed to small businesses as an employee, but I had never started one myself or, tried to figure out how to not run it into the ground immediately. So it was definitely, it was my first rodeo as a small business owner.
That's great. And what were some of those early challenges, you had to learn the hard way or you had to face to kind of make sure that this became a business and it just wasn't a very expensive hobby in the end?
Yeah. Probably the first mistake I made was thinking that I could maintain our own books. I had taken a couple accounting classes in college. I was not good at them at the classes. And when I was trying to maintain our own books, I was like, wow, I'm screwing this up pretty bad. So that was an early hard lesson. Just like hire an accountant right away. If you don't know how to keep books, don't try to do it yourself. So that was some wise advice I'd gotten early on too. It's like from other small business owners, like the two people you want to hire right away, not as employees, but as contractors, an attorney and an accountant. And I find deep wisdom in that advice.
There you go, some sage advice from a successful business owner.
Right.
Hope the right people are listening today. So, did you start yourself off as just selling at like farmers markets, or did you establish a storefront really fast, or what was your strategy in your mind as you were starting this first business?
Yep. I do have a background in the tech world. I started out in my 20s as a software engineer and was a web developer primarily. And so
Mhm.
that's kind of what I did before graduate school. And I've been a tech nerd my entire life. It's like my second language of sorts.
Mhm.
And so we started in a very small town in a very rural county in a very rural state of Iowa. And so I knew that local foot traffic in that specific community was never going to be the basis for, a sustainable business. And so it was a relatively easy decision for me to make, given my background, to immediately start with a website. I started with an e-commerce platform that was relatively simple, easy, cheap, and hooked it up to our systems to get orders in from people, collect payment, and all that stuff. So e-commerce was really my first sales channel, and it came pretty naturally given my background and the set of circumstances that we were in, like just by nature of where we were physically located.
Okay. And how things start out just establishing an e-commerce site without having a physical presence and getting things to be known.
Yeah, honestly, it was just like word of mouth, friends and family, just reaching out to people, talking about it on social media a lot. And I even started that before we incorporated as a business. I had chosen the brand name prior to incorporating. And I think I set up a Facebook page for it even before we incorporated as a formal business. And so I had already started to kind of like put that energy out into the world that, hey, I'm doing this thing. I'm starting this new coffee business. Here it is. People were interested. And, coffee is a very widely consumed beverage. So it was relatively easy to find people within my friends and family network and, professional contacts from prior experience who were like, hey, I like coffee. Brian's doing this cool coffee thing. And oh, he's got a website now. So that's really where our first customers came from. I I I don't know exactly how long I knew 100% of the people that were ordering from us online personally, but it
Okay.
was a long time. We started there and worked our way.
All right. So I've got other litany of other questions here, but I want to save that for our harvest to pour journey.
Okay.
So we're gonna get into the heart of this now. The harvest to pour journey I like to talk about is, of course, the harvest where you're sourcing.
Mhm.
We can talk about the different locations and the importance of these small farms, and where you're sourcing, why you're sourcing, what you're sourcing, and then how you make roasting coffee uniquely yours. Like you said, there's a lot of coffee roasters out there, but everybody somehow has to make has a way of making theirs uniquely theirs, and
Mhm.
that's why people go to those versus another coffee shop,
Yep.
amongst many other reasons. And then the pour is getting back into the marketing, how you get people to find you,
Mhm.
stay with you, and keep coming back. All right.
Yep.
So let's take a step back, and also I want to kind of get into some of the challenges you have along the way
Mhm.
with each step.
Yeah.
So the harvest. So how do you source? What inspires you to source from the people you source from?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. It's one of my favorite parts of the business, and it's one that I started to develop a kind of a method and principles for pretty early on. When I wrote our original mission statement and core values at the outset of our business, I think it was even before we incorporated, or right around the same time. Our core values are around quality, the quality of the product that we both source and produce for our customers, freshness, which refers to us, only selling or only roasting what we've already sold. We don't roast a bunch of coffee and then try to sell it. We sell the coffee and then roast it and send it to customers.
Okay.
So freshness is kind of a core part of what we do. And then the last core value is relationships. And relationships go both directions from us up and down the supply/value chain. Um, the very first coffee source that we purchased from as a commercial operation was I don't call it direct trade, but it's kind of like a close relationship with a producer style of sourcing rather than working through a large importing company that has a whole bunch of different coffees from all over the place. Um, we formed a relationship with a Nicaraguan producer, and it was the first supplier that we bought like big sacks of unroasted coffee from. And it's a relationship that we've maintained to this day. And we have multiplied the number of those types of sourcing relationships that I have started to call kind of like relationship coffees. And really, it's just fewer links in the supply chain is kind of the more abstract way to describe it. But we now have 3 or 4 supply relationships with producers that are similar in other countries. And so the Nicaraguan producer was our first, and then we'd supplement with coffees from an importing company. And then slowly, I've just been able to add more and more of those relationship style suppliers. Our next one after that was a producer from Papua New Guinea. And that is also a relationship that we carry to this day. We more recently added, I think it's been 4 or 5 years, we've been with a close relationship Brazilian producer. And so when I add these kind of relationship suppliers, they're in different regions basically, because those different regions kind of comprise different elements of our product catalog. And so it's been an slow iterative process of prioritizing those close relationship suppliers while also still relying on importing companies who also do, good work, have high quality product. Nothing bad to say about them, but it's just our style of sourcing has kind of evolved out of that close relationship principle.
Have you had the opportunity to meet any of the people, the farms, or the people in the farms of these close relationships you have?
Yeah, we have visited our Nicaraguan producer twice in 2018 and 2019. So it's been a bit since we've been down there to visit. And I like to think of them as our crown jewel close relationship. They have they put such a high premium on quality and quality control processes throughout the entire cycle of everything that happens before anything ever shows up on my doorstep. And it shows in the quality of their coffees. Some of the best coffees I've ever tasted have come from this producer in Nicaragua. And I've had other roasters who don't necessarily purchase from that same producer that I've shared some of these what are award-winning coffees. I've shared with other roasters years later have written to me and said, I still remember that cup of coffee from this Nicaraguan producer.
Wow.
Yeah, me too. It's that good. So that's a really great one. We visited them twice. So we've been able to see, it's one thing to get this information on the premium they put on quality and production and all that stuff in marketing materials that they supply, which is great. But we have a high level of transparency that way. But to actually go there and see it put into practice was invaluable for us as a business. In addition to just being a lot of fun, we are visiting our Brazilian producer in June. So we'll be there, I think actually this time in 2 months, when we're recording this, I'll be down in Brazil visiting our relationship partner down there.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you definitely have, you continue to tighten that relationship by visiting, seeing what they have to offer, having it taste fresh there. And I assume a lot of coffee, these smaller, they're doing a lot of different treatments to the coffee. As far as when I say treatments, like the wash, the naturals, the anaerobics and all that. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So now you have these established relationships, all these unique coffees, and probably some of them very unique because, the harvest is only so big. How do you what makes your coffee uniquely Ross Street roasted?
Yeah, every roaster approaches the craft a little bit differently, and there are a few different types of roasting machines, and so those can have subtle differences in the outcome of the end product. I don't necessarily say one is better than the other or one approach is better than the other. There's a lot of really good coffee out in the world right now, and especially in the US market. It's really there's never been a better time to be a drinker of good quality coffee than right now. It's just very, very good. There's a lot of awesome production going on. There's a lot of awesome roasters doing what they do. So I I don't claim that Ross Street does anything necessarily dramatically different or dramatically better than everybody else. And I have been around long enough to know that I can spot differences in the quality of sourcing materials, like the raw green coffees that are sourced, and then also the approaches that roasters take to their craft. And I know what makes ours uniquely ours. And so what I think we've done a pretty good job of at Ross Street Roasting is making high quality specialty coffees approachable to what I call quote unquote normal coffee drinkers.
Okay.
I think it's kind of slowly wearing off, especially as specialty coffee just penetrates, more and more of the overall coffee consuming market. But when we started 9 years ago, specialty coffee had kind of a reputation problem as being like really snobby and pretentious. And what we did right out of the gate was say, well, we're getting the same coffees as these like, hipster coffee roasters from Portland or whatever. We're in the middle of nowhere in Iowa, and I'm introducing a product to people who've never had coffee like this before. And I can't come at them being a snob. I have to meet them where they are. And so we've tried to strike a balance in our sourcing of raw materials, the development of our product catalog, and our approach to roasting for each of the products in our catalog to really meet people where they are. So for as small as we are, we have a robust product catalog that spans the roast color spectrum, all the way from pretty light fruity roasts all the way through a pretty dark smoky roast, depending on what people are, interested in and used to drinking. And we like to meet people where they are and then take them on a journey. So I think it's not necessarily the product itself. It's part of it, what we've done, but it's also our approach to our customers that makes our brand unique in the specialty coffee market, especially.
All right. You mentioned your customer's journey, which is a great segue into the pour of how you let people know who you are. What do you do? What is their customer journey that makes them want to come back and keep trying different blends that you roast specifically versus somebody else? And especially your e-commerce, you usually don't have that much of I think you have a small front facing now in your town, but most people are not going to go search out the rural area you're in and just try a cup of coffee. They're going to they're going to use what you've been using all along as the e-commerce site. So what does their customer journey look like, and what keeps them coming back?
Yeah, I tend to kind of think of our customer profiles in the e-commerce store in two different categories. The I know what I like and I want to drink it forever crowd. And so we have some kind of like standard everyday coffees that really hit that segment pretty well. And we come up with ways to incentivize folks to come back. In e-commerce, it's pretty common to have like coffee subscriptions that if you sign up as a subscriber, you get a little bit of a discount off of like full retail price. We do that. We have a loyalty rewards program that like banks up points as people, come back and do repeat purchases, and then they can redeem those points for like, 10, 20, whatever dollars off their next order. So those are kind of like the marketing techniques that we use to keep people coming back. And so a really solid product that meets people where they are, incentivized with those types of retention-oriented programs built into the website, is how we hit that group especially. And then we have limited or seasonal offerings that kind of like make things interesting for people who like to try new stuff. And so that tends to be more single origin coffees specifically. The I know what I like and I want to drink it every day forever tend to be in our blends, which we have 3 different blends for drip coffee, 4 different blends for drip coffee. We have 2 different blends for espresso purposes. So we have like 5 blend products. I think I did the math. No, 6 in the blends category. And then in the single origins category, we have a few that are permanent year-round offerings. And so if there is somebody that's like, I really like this single origin from Nicaragua, we have a product from there called Divine Inspiration. We've had it like every year we've been in business. It's generally come from the same area and the same group of producers. It's changed a little bit over time, but it's like super stable. And we have some people that just really love that one and always want to drink it as a single origin offering. There's another one from Brazil that's the same kind of deal. And then we rotate more limited, smaller lots, micro lots. And then there's one more product that is like a total wild card that we throw into that single origin category. And people are absolutely, they either love it or hate it. It's a very polarizing product. But for the people that love it, they go bananas over it. It's called the Stumbling Monkey. We do it once a year in the fall, right around like Thanksgiving, Black Friday, Cyber Monday is when we've started to standardize our release schedule for the product. It is a natural process Ethiopian coffee, which tends to be a fruitier style of, a fruitier type of coffee, just inherent to its, natural characteristics. And then we do kind of like a medium darkish roast on it. But the really crazy thing is we put the unroasted coffee in a whiskey barrel that has been also used to age a beer. And so take an American oak whiskey barrel. It's had a spirit in it for however many years. Empty out the spirit. A brewery gets their hands on it and then puts a beer in it. It's typically like a Russian style imperial stout. And then when they drain the beer out of it, we get our hands on it like immediately because we want a very fresh, wet barrel. And so then we put the unroasted natural process Ethiopian coffee in it. We roll it around the shop a couple times a week for a month. And then we take out the green coffee and then we roast it. And that's the Stumbling Monkey. So we do like that crazy product in the fall. And that's another way to just kind of like get people wound up about something that we're doing. It's a lot.
That's kind of,
and it's a crazy product.
That's a foodie's dream.
Yeah. And sometimes we've been able to get an Iowa whiskey that was then used to age an Iowa beer. We can't do all Iowa every single time, but it's happened a few times where there's a distillery just south of Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and then a brewery gets their hands on it in the Iowa City area, which is pretty close by. And then we get our hands on the barrel after Iowa City Brewery, and we're about an hour and 15 minutes away from Iowa City. So we get this nice little like central and eastern Iowa crazy product every once.
Oh my gosh. That distillery wouldn't be a Green Frog, would it?
No, the distillery is called Cedar Ridge.
Cedar Ridge. All right. That is hilarious. Please tell me you've actually filmed this journey this coffee takes.
Yeah.
Just put it all together.
Yeah.
This is great.
We've done some social media shorts on it over the years of like me walking the barrel, like rolling the barrel by walking on it across the shop, which I tell our employee Jenny not to do that because, I can do it because I'm an owner and not an employee. And if I get hurt, it's my own fault. Yeah. So we have fun with that one. It's great.
Okay. And now a word from our sponsor. Hey, are you spinning your wheels trying to figure out what will really boost your business's bottom line? At Emberry Solutions, our Profit Priority Workshop is here to cut through the noise. We help you zero in on what truly matters, aligning your team, optimizing your processes, and magnifying your profits. Imagine your business running smoother than ever, with every decision and effort leading straight to increased profits. That's what focusing on the right priorities can do. Ready to boost your efficiency and profits? Visit Emberry Solutions and let's start making your business work smarter. At Emberry Solutions, we take your business from bottlenecks to breakthroughs. So I've got to ask, you talk about a ton of different blends, a ton of different coffees. What's your process for keeping track of it all and when to do it? And because you also said, I really want to go in, just fall into that, as you sell, then you roast. So how do you coordinate all that?
Yeah, we've developed a really good relationship with one of our suppliers who has also become kind of like a logistics and sourcing partner for us. Mm-hmm. And so he knows our product catalog really well and the component coffees that go into it, and is able to source things from not only, he has a relationship with his cousin in Papua New Guinea who exports coffee to the United States. And then, our contact there, he warehouses it and then gets it to us. So he started out as just our Papua New Guinea contact. And our relationship with him has kind of evolved into also sourcing from other countries and then handling some of the seasonality characteristics of working in coffee. And so there have been times where we've had to, for our blends, we've had to swap from a coffee that we've been using in a particular blend to something else. And so we can work with him to say, hey, we're running out of this and you don't have any more. What do we do? And then he'll find some options and then work with another person who's more kind of like on the roasting evaluation side of things to help us identify some options. We'll try them out. We'll work them into our blends and make sure that like there's consistency of flavor profile, even when we're making those kind of like component changes. So that working relationship is how we handle, the ebbs and flows of the supply chain. And when sometimes you have to like change a component that you've been using and got used to, that has become a really important part of how we are able to maintain consistency in our product catalog.
Okay. That's so just the logistics, playing that out, having somebody reach out that sort of your sourcer in a way.
Yeah. Yep. Because sometimes we have to buy coffees for an entire year once. Like certain suppliers are like that. Like our Nicaraguan coffees, like they land in the U.S. once a year, and so and we use some of those coffees for the entire year. Other countries we can get like other companies have multiple harvest dates per year and multiple shipments to the United States per year. So like. That side of it varies a lot depending on a lot of different factors. And so to have a logistics partner who's also part of the sourcing game is super helpful for us. It allows us to stay like small and nimble, but also have like a really solid
that's really cool
consistency.
So through this whole harvest to pour journey, what are some of your general open challenges and process and communication you've overcome and maybe you still have to this day, just in general?
I think the thing that I've always never been 100% comfortable with or confident about is marketing. I
Really?
am a decent communicator, maybe better than average. So in the early stages of the business, when I was responsible for 100% of the functions of the business, including marketing, I was good enough to fake it. And we developed a good relationship with a branding consultant in 2019. So we started in 2015, and in 2019, we partnered with a branding consultant who helped us develop a really solid brand assets, our logo, our typeface, our product packaging. All of that stuff got worked into, all of our emails, our website design, all of that stuff. So that helps. But then also taking that and developing a marketing strategy to enable sales and business development. That's not my wheelhouse necessarily. And there's never been anybody super solidly for a long period of time in working on that function within the business. And I've tried various things to try to address that, and I still don't feel like I got it nailed down. And that's after 9 years of being in business. So like, obviously we've been good enough to continue to exist as a business, and we're a sustainable business model now, which is great. But there's still that piece that I'm just like, man, if I could figure out how to like get a marketing game plan together and really execute on it, I'd love to see what would happen. And it's just, it's never come together.
Okay. That's good. And that kind of spans the whole gambit between the harvest and the pour, because obviously people need to know, and that's what your marketing comes from.
Yep.
Okay. And is there any, I still between the logistics and you having to roast and you having that person that's kind of helping you, do you ever run into any kind of bottlenecks within your producing?
We've had some bumps along the way, but there's never been any single incident that has just absolutely stopped us dead in our tracks and kept us from being able to do what we need to do for any period of time longer than like a couple days. There's never been anything that's just taken us out for like a week, other than when there was nobody else helping in the business and I had to go on vacation. That's it. Like, we just tell all our customers, like, Brian's not going to be here for 7 days. No business is going to happen. But other than that, we've been able to kind of like maintain a pretty solid, steady, consistent operation, which I guess after 9 years, I should probably consider myself pretty fortunate.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I've run into other places where they're spreading their roasting over an entire week, and really they can really do everything in 1 to 2 days, roast, bag, and deliver.
Yep.
And it was just that they were doing so many other things throughout the day that once we compressed it, now they have a set system. It's almost a slide rule system. So if the capacity grows, they just copy and paste to day 3.
Yeah. Yep. I would love to get ourselves into the situation where we would have to figure that out, because we have taken a pretty slow and steady wins the race approach to business development. And now that I'm no longer our operations manager or roaster, I'm in an ownership position where my primary responsibility is to just grow the business. I don't have to do all the stuff inside the shop anymore. And so it's literally my job now to get us into that kind of trouble. And I'm working on trying to get us into that kind of situation. So if I do my job right, we'll have to figure that out. Like, what happens when we 3x our sales? And I mean, I know where we are at with our current capacity. And if we 3x'd our sales, we'd be like, okay, we can't do things the way we've been doing them for the past couple of years. Like, what are we going to do? How are we going to figure this out? But I like those kinds of like scaling challenges. I like to think I'm like a systems thinker, and it's part of what's helped us be lean and mean and operationally efficient over the years. So I look forward to, actually getting us into the situation where I have to like, oh, okay, now we have to like completely change how we do operations and probably change staffing. How do we do that? So looking forward to that kind of trouble.
Oh yeah, that sounds exciting. I love digging into these kind of challenges and problems.
Mm-hmm.
That actually was a really good segue into your leadership role. So you had a couple of different roles as you were developing this company, even actually stepping outside of it for a while as a, was it full-time or part-time developer or tech at the same time too. So briefly take us through, when you realized you needed to step out and work, well, essentially be a 9 to 5 and a business owner at the same time, and then step away from being a roaster and a producer and stepping into more of a leadership role.
Yeah. Over the course of 9 years, I've changed the way that this business fits into my daily life 3 times. It started as a side hustle. I had a full-time job and I started the business and then grew it. That arrangement lasted for 2 years. Then I worked in the business full-time, not much pay, which is normal. So I did that for 2 years. And it was the impact on our income was painful, but I view those 2 years as having been very instructive. And so I don't regret that decision. But 4 years ago, I went back to work full time in the tech industry. I worked in tech in my 20s. I went to graduate school and worked in higher education. That phase lasted about 9-ish years. And so really kind of like right around the time I turned 40 is when my wife and I decided that like I need to go get a real job again. So I got back into the tech industry, and I've been working back in tech for 4 years now, and the business is now a side hustle again. But I am the majority owner of the business. And so I don't use this title, but I'm basically a CEO, mini CEO of a tiny little business. And I've also, in the course of that 4 years, planned a physical relocation from where we were living in Iowa to Wisconsin. And so, and that happened last year. So I'm no longer physically in the town where this business operates. And that's been the case for over a year now, just over a year. And so far that's been going really well. Part of what's made that possible is having a really, really good employee who's managing the physical operation and all aspects of it: roasting, packaging, shipping, order fulfillment, all that good stuff. She's even started to take over. Well, she's taken over green coffee ordering. And so there's just a lot of functions that she's been able to take on that has enabled me to minimize the number of like operational things that I need to worry about in the business and let me focus on business development, growing the business, and have a full-time job. So it's working so far, and I'm really grateful for that ability.
That's actually really exciting and very interesting. That would be a whole other episode they could dig into.
Yeah.
I have way too many questions, not for this one, but that is really cool. I would love to dive more into that. But right now, I step into where do you want to take Ross Street Roasting next?
One sales channel that I have not said a single word about so far in our interview is the commercial side of our business. We have sold, I consider our e-commerce sales channel, which is direct to consumer, to have been our most successful sales channel over the long haul of the business. But we've also sold to commercial business to business style sales channels for almost that same amount of time. 6 months of having launched our website for direct to consumer sales, I had our first commercial account with a coffee shop in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, that we still service to this day. And I knew the tech game. And so I putting together our website and hooking it into the operational systems and all that stuff, that was easy for me. The word of mouth advertising, email, newsletter, marketing, that stuff was relatively easy for me. So that sales channel was always just kind of this is something that just comes almost naturally to me. So it's not that hard. The commercial side, I had never worked in the coffee industry. I had never worked in a coffee shop. I'd never worked in like a management or logistics position in like a grocery store. But here I was trying to sell into these like commercial entities, like grocery stores, coffee shops, stuff like that. And so where I would like to take the business now is to just, and this is what I've been focusing on over the past number of months, is now that I don't have to worry about so many of the operational aspects of the business, I've been able to really start to dig into developing the commercial sales of our business. Because it is the case that for most roasters, you build the most solid foundation on wholesale volume accounts to business channels. Yes, the margins are smaller, but the volume is generally quite a bit bigger. And so that's been something that I've been working on and will continue to work on, just establishing a much more solid foundation to develop the business through commercial sales. And then also not dropping the ball on our pretty solid direct to consumer brand through the website. That it's not necessarily on autopilot. I still notice the dip in sales when we don't do marketing on the direct to consumer side. We just ran a campaign last week and I was like, wow, we should do marketing more often. Of course we do. But that to me feels more incremental, and then the commercial side feels more exponential. And so I'm trying to focus on that side.
Okay. So you're working on scaling into those relationships, those commercial relationships and stuff. And wonder how, just kind of curious, wonder how similar those relationships as far as like professional relationships would be between your growers, and if there's a kind of parallel the type of relationship you have with a grocer or a commercial relationship.
Yeah, it really depends on the commercial partner. Selling into big box grocery retail, it's hard to differentiate yourself as a brand just in general. There's a lot of massive brands that are so well entrenched in grocery retail that for somebody like us, it is really difficult to put a chip in that wall. Now, smaller scale, more kind of like boutique grocery, food co-ops, stuff like that. We've had good success with those in Iowa and the upper Midwest. And so those are a little bit more of a natural fit. But, of course, the volume's much smaller. Coffee shops are a completely different animal and require a completely different approach. They're a little bit more well suited to the type of business model that we have, both our product catalog, our sourcing ethos, how we maintain relationships, and how those influence the product and how the product gets into the customer. So we found that it's a little bit more of a natural play for us to try to go after coffee shop business. But that's a very competitive environment also. Instead of a small handful of very huge, well-established, decade-spanning brands in grocery, in the specialty coffee shop space, you have thousands of little roasters like Ross Street Roasting, all going after these, what for total market share of coffee shops is a relatively small slice of the coffee shop pie. Because in the coffee shop market, you're also dealing with some of those same massive brands that have their own stores, their own brand, and they dominate the majority of coffee shop market. And so small, independent, locally owned specialty coffee shops are already a small portion of the coffee shop market. And then you have a whole bunch of roasters like us trying to go after that small set. So it's not easy, but I've found that that's probably where our best commercial viability is, despite those challenges. And so we'll just, we'll keep chipping away at it.
Good luck with that. So you brought up you have a very good, I guess she would be a manager, the one who's running the or she's kind of your chief operations in some aspects.
Yep.
So tell me a little bit about your team. What are they best at? What have you really seen? What characteristics are you looking for in your team, and what is your team best at?
Yeah. So our current operations manager, Jenny, is awesome. And she has been with us for 2 years. Yeah, 2 years. And in the role that she occupies, which the job title is operations manager, that includes, as I said, roasting is part of that, but then it's all this other stuff. When I created that position, it was our second employee, and it was an expanded role that I was interviewing for, and Jenny was the perfect fit for it. And in the interview process, I made it clear, I said, I am hiring somebody in this position to take over operational responsibilities for everything that happens in this building and everything that comes into this building and everything that goes out of this building, because I am not physically going to be here forever. Because at that point, I already kind of knew that we were going to make a physical move sometime in the future. And so the first 30, 60, 90-day checkpoints, we had a list of things that was okay. And I'm a big fan of okay, you watch me do something, and then I'll watch you do that same thing. And then you go do that thing without me watching you. And that I kind of mapped that onto the 30, 60, 90-day plan. And so we really worked out a list of all of the jobs to be done for that particular role. And then using that 30, 60, 90, you watch me, I watch you, now go do model. By the end of that 90 days, I was 75 to 85% confident that this was going to work out well. And we had not moved yet. And so there was another 9-ish months or so for me to still be in town, but also just continue to build capacity for Jenny to take on the rest of the responsibilities with a diminishing amount of and now that I've been physically gone from where the operation is for a year, that's going really well. And so, as a manager or a leader, I look for somebody who is curious, hardworking, and thankfully I've found all of those things and more in our ops manager, Jenny. She has been an employee that whole time, but I'm currently in the process of bringing her into a co-ownership position with me in the business, because she's absolutely a pillar of the business and has been way more than an employee almost from day one. And so a piece of co-ownership in conjunction with me is absolutely something that I want for her and us as a business. So that I think is going to be a solid move.
Yeah. That's a great you found an individual like that. And also I don't know if you realize enough, the way you were teaching her to as you slowly weaned yourself off is very indicative of what they call the EDGE method,
Mm.
where you educate, you demonstrate, you guide, and then they execute independently of you.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you knew you were doing that or not, but that sounds exactly.
Yeah.
It works really well.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to leave a nice legacy with her too, because she's going to probably mirror what you've done with her,
Right.
with the employees that bring them.
Yeah. It's not the first time that I've been in a people management position. And then I've been managed by people professionally a lot, like my entire adult working life. So I've both had a chance to experience practicing leadership but then also like experiencing leadership and management. So I know what I like and I know what I don't like. And I think about the differences between those two things. And I try to like model the things that I like about managers that I've enjoyed working for and with in the past. And I tend to be the type of person that likes management that's involved to the extent of being empowering and enabling and not being micromanaging. And then on the other, like micromanaging, bad. The other end of that spectrum is like total hands off. I don't care what you're doing management. I don't like that either. I don't like experiencing that.
No.
So finding that happy medium is something that I try to strike with, as a manager and leader in the business. And hopefully I can do that well. And I also value transparency. So every once in a while I ask Jenny, like, am I actually doing a good job, like managing you? Like,
I imagine communication is very much key.
Yeah.
With you being a different place. And so you guys, is your communication relatively regular? Is it scheduled or is it as needed? What is your best practice for that?
Yep. We have weekly check-ins that range anywhere from 45 to 60 minutes on Friday mornings. Every Friday morning we meet. I'm posted up in a coffee shop in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. And sometimes I'm in an office setting like I am now. Sometimes I'm at home. And same thing with Jenny. Sometimes she's down at the shop Friday morning. Sometimes she's at home Friday mornings. But the consistency is not where we are. It's like showing up for that weekly video call and just checking in. And I've had remote, like being a tech worker, I've worked more remote roles in tech in my career at this point than I've worked non-remote roles in tech. And so I really know how to be a remote professional. And so that helps a lot. So we lean on those tools that help keep us, those digital tools that help keep us coordinated and the operation and the business kind of like moving the right direction.
All right, great. So I got a couple more questions. These next couple here this can be hard, this can be easy. And so what is your favorite beverage within Ross Street Roasting? What's your favorite beverage when you're just out in the town?
My favorite coffee is the one that I'm holding my hand at the moment. That's my best answer. I've drank coffee for a long time, and I've drank a lot of different coffees for a long time, and I've drank a lot of our own coffees for a long time. And so what I've developed, I've not established like one single favorite coffee. Generally, my preferences lean toward single origin coffees on the lighter end of the roast spectrum. And I generally like to have them prepared using a pour over method. So like if it's me controlling all the parameters, that tends to be where I go. But even within those very controlled parameters, like I don't like to drink the same thing for longer than like a month. And so I'm constantly changing. It's our own product, but I also buy coffees from other roasters regularly. And I do love going to coffee shops. There's a wonderful coffee shop in Eau Claire that I probably show up at once or twice a week. And I tend to go they do pour overs and they have single origin offerings. So that tends to be where I go. But I also love espresso. I've developed a taste for that over the last 4 or 5 years. And so I have a small espresso setup at home and I kind of like oscillate between the pour over and the espresso at home. But I do the same thing in a coffee shop. So I don't have a favorite. I just love coffee and even bad coffee. Like I went through a phase where I was a coffee snob and I would like turn my nose up at anything that wasn't like super awesome premium specialty coffee. but I've worked through that, and like I find value in drinking coffees that aren't that great. I think as a professional who has a premium on quality, I have to learn to appreciate or at least respect the full range of quality in the coffee space. And so if I'm drinking really like what looks like dirty mop water in a greasy spoon diner somewhere in the rural Midwest, I can lean into that and be like, okay, what's going on here? Like, and
What's going on here?
Oh.
It's been sitting on the shelves for 4 years,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
all right.
And then at
That
the end of
gives a
the
great
day,
answer. I
like
like that.
there's still the chemical aspect of caffeine that is a drug and it is addictive. And I have developed a dependency on it over these long years. And so, that's kind of like my fallback. It's like, well, if I have to drink crappy coffee, at least I'm still getting some caffeine to get my brain to do what it needs to do.
All right. That's great. I've found myself getting all coffee snobbish too. I've got like a pink bourbon in here.
Yeah.
Like, is it bourbon or bourbon? I don't
Bone.
know, but it's good.
Yeah.
Okay. So, okay. Do you have any special events or promotions coming up with Ross Street Roasting you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, we do. We just launched a limited seasonal offering. It's a Honduran coffee that we've called Cedral Sunset. It comes from a single farm called Finca El Cedral. And so it's a single farm, single farmer micro lot offering. And that is available on our website. We'll probably have it for probably through the end of June, at least, maybe into July. And then we're also running a 20% off special on our single origin Nicaraguan coffees. And the promo code for that is Nicaragua 20 off. So Nicaragua 20 off is the promo code for that. There are 2 offerings from that producer right now on our website. They're both very good. There's one called Sweet Honey Ross, which is a honey processed coffee. Very smooth, easy drinking coffee. And then our standard that I mentioned earlier, Divine Inspiration, also a single origin from there. So that's the specials we've got running right now.
All right. Thanks a lot. Well, Brian, this has been an awesome conversation. I can keep going and going.
Well,
I've really enjoyed picking your brain about this. You've got a very unique, I like the e-commerce aspects you took and right off the bat noticed, you realized your environment you were in and said, we got to do something a little bit different. And the journey it's taking you on from, making the side hustle to going completely, independent on your own, working in it and being successful and eventually stepping out to do something else, but still able to support the business. And now like I said, I was surprised. I didn't know you'd moved.
Yeah.
So, and now you're operating from a distance and you found a great team and a great operator to keep this going, yet you still stay within the loop and has taken, stepped away from the roasting and the business of the business, but it really is now stepping into that leadership CEO role. And let's see how we can blow this up in a good way.
Yeah.
And you're starting to look into that scaling, going now to the B2B side of both things and discovering those challenges. And I really am looking forward to seeing where that journey takes you, where that success takes you. This is great. But yeah, I really appreciate, there's a lot of lessons learned here. I hope people listening will pick up on, future coffee roasters or current coffee roasters like, oh, this is what I need to adjust. I think there's a lot to be learned here.
Yeah.
So, Brian, I really appreciate your time coming on the Harvest of Pour, and thank you very much.
Yeah. And I have always, if anybody listening wants to ask any follow-up questions or anything like that, I'm really easy to reach online, either just through our website, contact form that'll show up, but also on social media, like LinkedIn, I think is probably a decent place to find me there if you want to ask me any questions. I've always taken a very open book, transparent sharing. Like as a tech worker, I started in the early days of the open source software movement. And so that ethos within tech very much kind of carried over into just how I think about myself as a business person in relationship with other people. I've met some people in the coffee industry who are pretty closed book. I'm not going to tell you my secrets, but I will say that in my experience, that's been the vast minority. of other coffee professionals. I found coffee professionals to be very like-minded to myself, like open, ready to share, talk about lessons learned and stuff like that. So hopefully it's apparent that I love talking about this stuff, and I can also keep talking about this stuff if you're interested.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing. We'll put all that contact information in the show notes, and we'll add in your Nicaragua 20 off for as long as it's going for. And yeah, we'll make sure that's all there, all the information. But really appreciate your offer, your reach out. And I would say, tell everybody, please take advantage of that.
Awesome.
All right, Ryan. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Matthew.
Thank you for listening to Harvest to Pour, the business of beverages with Matthew Shipp. Check the show notes for our guest contact information. And connect with Matthew Shipp on LinkedIn today.